Hello, everyone. I'm Joe Wellew. Thanks so much for tuning in to Expert Insights, where we talk with industry leaders across modern financial services to discuss leadership and innovation. Let's get started. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Super excited today to introduce my guest, Mr. Brent Gleason. Brent is a Navy SEAL combat veteran, 5 times Inc. 500 CEO, award-winning entrepreneur, 2 times best-selling author. He leads growth, strategy, technology, and client experience. And Brent holds degrees in finance and economics from SMU and an MBA from the University of San Diego, and certificates in English literature and criminal justice from Oxford University. Brent, buddy, it's good to see you, man. Good to be with you.
Great to be here. Been looking forward to it.
So I want to start out talking about a little bit about your most recent book that you published called Embrace the Suck, which I thought was a really clever name considering some of the crazy things that have been going on, particularly in our world the last few years. But tell us a little bit about the book, and then would love to also have you maybe share with the audience your background on the heels of that.
Sure. Yeah, often it's when you start writing a book or you're collaborating with your publisher on what the book is going to be about, why you're writing this book, why is this book relevant to your intended audience right now. And I'll get to the timing of the book and the perfection of that as an outcome, unintended outcome in a minute. But because of the work we do at Taking Point Leadership around leadership development, we work with Fortune 500 organizations all over the world. And we spend so much time developing leaders and managers at every level in large, complex organizations that so much of that is around personal development. We tend to bucket that in professional development, but those things are so intimately intertwined, especially as you rise in the ranks in the upper echelons of leadership in an organization, as you well know, that the balance between your personal life, your personal development, your personal values, how you conduct yourself on and off the battlefield, those things are so intertwined. And we've done so much research on behavioral psychology, philosophy, and all these different things to develop curriculum around those programs that we thought maybe there's a book that could be not a follow-on to my first book, which was about leadership, culture, and business transformation, but really a book more about personal transformation. And so in thinking about what the context of that book could be, we wanted to wrap it around a really bold title. I'd never written a book in what is effectively the self-improvement space, which is the largest genre of content out there. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry just in and of itself. Nor had I actually read any self-help books, maybe 1 or 2 years and years ago.
Come on, really?
No, like never. I read business books.
So incredibly well-rounded and informed on all things personal growth, but that's actually surprising.
So I started, I appreciate that. So, I fake it till I make it typically. But so I actually went out and started looking at, what types of books are out there and what resonates with me and my writing style and whatnot. And some books did, some books didn't, but finding the continuity between what's very popular and what resonates with a broader audience, and also what we feel will be most impactful based on our meaning team members at Taking Point Leadership, but specifically me, around the subject matter expertise I want to convey to that audience. And that's where Embrace the Suck was born. The terminology based on the title is from the military, obviously, but really it's a book about resilience, but being very intentional in how we develop our mental fortitude, not just having it develop haphazardly over time based on the trials and tribulations of life and work, but being very intentional in how we move more quickly from having a fixed mindset to having a growth mindset. A lot of that obviously is based on Carol Dweck's work. She's a professor of psychology at a little-known school called Stanford University, but some of that research we utilized in the book and built around that, focusing really on developing a growth mindset, maintaining a growth mindset. So when you look at challenges, obstacles, setbacks, constructive criticism, even the success of others, people with a growth mindset use that as fuel for their journey, and whereas people in teams with a fixed mindset usually see those as obstacles or debilitating events where they go no further. And so that's really what the book is about.
It makes so much sense the way you phrased it. And I love just how deep you guys have went into this topic, and particularly how intertwined personal development and professional development are. And I think in running a company, we both run businesses. a lot of people think they're two different things, right? And
Yeah.
they're like your mindset. If you have a growth mindset, it bleeds into everything. And that's really what you're describing, right?
Absolutely. And I think from a leadership standpoint too, as you well know, how we conduct ourselves off the battlefield, out of the office, away from the team must be very consistent if we want to exhibit authentic leadership capabilities, really tie our values to the values of the organization. We've all seen those leaders, and some of us have worked with those leaders that are two very different people when they're leading the company and when they're at home or in their personal life. And those things, especially these days, do not work well together. So this book, we found that opportunity, but the blessing, which has been extremely humbling, is the testimonials from the book, and the feedback we've gotten from the book is not just, wow, this was motivational, this was inspirational. Literally, and I say this again with great humility, some of the feedback we've gotten has brought me to tears practically, or realistically, literally, that this book has saved people's lives, literally battling cancer, or it's saved marriages, or given them the fuel they need to overcome extreme life obstacles, even severe aspects of mental health, people who have been borderline suicidal. That type of feedback is not something we wrote the book for, but has been immensely impactful on me and also on the team to understand that we could have even had that type of impact on people out there.
You know, this is, you've got such an incredible story, and both as a Navy SEAL, which is just a fascinating world, and I've had conversations with you, some of the experiences you've had and some of the things you had to overcome as part of that journey, but then also your business journey. And talk to us a little bit about the similarities between those two things, right? And specifically, I think there's certain people that, you know, you use battlefield comparisons in business, and they get a little like, but honestly, business is a battlefield. I mean, building a company, like I can think of nothing more relevant than it's like a war zone some days, right? Like walk us through the similarities between.
Sure. I think to give that context, we'll give you a little bit of the backstory. So when I started on this journey, I had done my undergraduate education at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, started working in finance after college. That was my first job after graduating. But a few years prior to that, I had met a young man, a friend of mine now, who was a freshman when I was a sophomore. And he was one of these individuals who had a lifelong dream of becoming a Navy SEAL. Now, keep in mind, this was just pre 9/11, so we were at peace, technically speaking. And while I thought that was fascinating, intriguing, interesting, I also at the time deemed it to be somewhat of an unrealistic life path, knowing a little bit of what I did at the time about the extremely high attrition rate. And so,
by the way, what is the attrition rate for people that go?
All said and done, you're looking at about a 90% attrition rate per class, and we run 6 classes a year. So my class started with about 250 students, and 23 of us graduated.
That's incredible.
So we have what any leader would consider to be a significant talent acquisition challenge. Think of it as a sales funnel. We got to put better leads in the top of the funnel so we can close more deals, graduate more SEALs, grow the ranks of the SEAL teams. But after the years and years, 2 decades really of intense research, analysis, millions of your taxpayer dollars spent, we still graduate about 10% per class.
High standards.
Very, very high standards, yeah. Well, I mean, and in all seriousness, we've utilized that feedback, that data and the research to also better identify the types of talent we want to proactively go out and attract to our community. We'll come back to that later, but it's really one of our significant elements of our organizational transformation is to kind of put away the old guard mentality of the silent warrior aspect, because if we can't talk about it, we can't market ourselves as a brand, as an organization, that we won't attract the best possible people. So that was a painful journey to get some of the old guard on board, but it's been critical, especially in sort of that post 9/11 reality that we have been living in for 20 plus years, to get out there and find the best people. You have to go out just like any organization, just like you guys do, like we do, and you have to go attract top talent to that career path, which is not for everyone. So I was intrigued by his interest in that journey. And when I graduated, I was working in finance. He was a senior. He and I started training together for me, accountability partner, a way to stay fit. I've been a college athlete, and also to help him prepare for this arduous journey ahead. And by nature of the amount of time we started spending together, it piqued my interest enough to start reading, the available books at the time, the history of the SEAL teams, naval special warfare, from World War II up through Vietnam, where we really became the organization we are today, or at least in its infancy. And long story short, that evolving fascination with the organization, its culture, the mindset of the people that we attract, mixed with the relatively tedious and also intense nature of my entry-level financial analyst position, led me to the culmination of a decision to leave that job behind, much to my parents' dismay. And my buddy and I enlisted in the Navy as soon as he graduated. So that was the beginning of the journey.
So you went from, the coveted job in finance, right, to saying, I'm going to throw that in the trash can and I'm going to go right into like the hardest thing any human can fathom having to go through,
right.
Which is the SEAL training process, right?
Yes. And I think, that was really my first lesson in taking a big leap of faith, applying some calculated risk, and it was life-changing, as you can imagine. I mean that in a positive way. Obviously, I mentor young guys through the program now. I just met with one today who's graduating with my oldest son, going to the Naval Academy and wants to pursue a career in naval special warfare. But you really have to consider the implications of that job, that career, and the pros and cons of the implications of being a warrior, basically. But to really move past that and answer your question, when I transitioned out, like a lot of guys do, my first transitional step was to go to grad school. I found that to be a good step because it gives you a year or two, depending on what program you pursue, of transition, learn new things, network, and really identify a few career paths you might want to pursue. And very cliche, I know. I met my first business partner in our MBA program. He was a young entrepreneur with dreams of unicorn exits and all that fun stuff. And I had no aspirations of being an entrepreneur whatsoever. I was going to go back into finance, possibly real estate development. And we found a white space, though, in real estate tech, basically in the early versions of Zillow, Trulia, in building a real estate search engine. So that's what we did, and raised a couple $1 million for that, and built it up quickly over a couple of years. Explosive growth, as you can imagine, not due to our entrepreneurial savvy, but because of the explosive nature of the real estate bubble that we, of course, didn't think was a bubble. And everybody, the naysayers, they don't know what they're academics. They don't know what they're talking about.
I remember very well.
So I learned about hardship and organizational transformation and focusing on what's in your control. Other things you focus on in SEAL training, you learn on the battlefield, to my first entrepreneurial endeavor, which was successful ultimately at the beginning, but then we were faced with a lot of things that were wildly out of our control. So that was one of the first lessons.
So you had to adapt and make, course correct, make changes, really go into like this incredible uncertain times and find ways to get through it, right? I mean, that's
everything. We had to change our revenue model. We also went as far as actually going out, raising more money and starting a totally different company based on a lot of the things we learned by starting that business. So we learned so much about digital marketing, digital media, multi-channel analytics, search engine optimization, that some of our customers were asking if we did those types of things as well. We identified quickly that the answer should be yes, so that we could also diversify ourselves away from the real estate industry. And that's what we did.
Listening to your journey as an entrepreneur and building successful companies, and you see people that really admire how elite it is to become a SEAL, but you also think about from building a successful business and how difficult that is. The amount of times you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. Were those a lot of the parallels that you saw? And like, obviously at business, when I say it's also a battlefield, it's not life and death, literally.
It feels like it.
It feels like it, though. Like I remember, like there's days where I was like, I think it would be less painful just to die. But
yeah, I've been in some board meetings where I'm like, I'm going to die. This is the end of me.
Yeah. But I mean, how helpful was that for you to have that point of view as you're going through from a business journey, saying, I've seen the worst. Was it really like this? Was it like I've seen life and death, and this
Yeah.
isn't life? Was that it, or walk us through that, man?
I think, and I had this same conversation this morning with that young man that I mentioned earlier, because he asked me specifically, what are some of the main and most impactful takeaways from your time as a SEAL in combat that you've applied afterwards? Because he wanted to know, like, how is this going to impact my career post-military? And so the same answer really applies here. And not just naval special warfare, being a SEAL operator, but combat. If you want to look at it through a true lens, it gives you a level of consciousness that you cannot gain but through any other experience. It also gives you a level of just self-awareness, a level of acceptance, I think, of things that are out of your control and looking at the world in a different way. And you also, obviously, you manage stress, anxiety, and obstacles in a totally different manner than you do if you don't have that type of background. Now, granted, there's plenty of people out there that have developed their own mental fortitude and resilience through work, sports, and things like that. But obviously, combat gives you a completely different perspective on everything around you. And so when it came to the battlefield of business, the battlefield of entrepreneurship, as you well know, because everything ultimately is on your shoulders from an extreme ownership standpoint, the business lives and dies by you. And ultimately, its successes are the team's and its failures are yours, yours to own. Yeah. And so because I came from a culture that really nurtures that type of mindset, it was helpful to a degree. Now, granted, you take that mindset, you take those behavioral norms and you put them in a different context. I'm not saying there wasn't deep levels of stress. There weren't, moments of me in a fetal position with tears streaming down my face, maybe literally, maybe figuratively, I don't recall. Yeah. But you can move more quickly sort of from that bunker of human emotion, the stages of grief, if you will, when that roadblock presents itself, or that, you lose your biggest client, or two of your best people decide to leave and go to your competitor. All these things that we deal with when we're building companies.
Just natural obstacles.
They're natural obstacles that you quickly realize that, good, I'm going to learn from this. And you move more quickly from, you have the normal human emotion, you have the normal reaction, but it's quick. And you move more quickly into action-oriented execution beyond that.
So that makes a lot of sense to me, because when you're in battle, right, and you were in combat, right? Like, you did, how many tours did you
do? 3 combat deployments. So
you 3 combat deployments, right? When you're in those moments, my assumption from what you're saying, you don't really have the luxury of setting and overthinking it and feeling sorry for yourself and, going down the rabbit hole of saying, oh gosh, this is horrible. Like, you literally just have to move forward and take action, or you're going to die, right? Right. If I think about how many people, and we've been, we serve the lending industry as a big part of our customer base. They've been through tremendous challenges this last couple of years, lots of resilient people. But I know in talking to so many of them, there's been so many moments over the last couple of years where they're looking into the abyss saying, this is awful. Like, how do I get through it? And I think the ones that have found ways to win actually don't spend as much time thinking about how bad the situation is. They think about how to take action and really just get to the next step. Sounds like what you're saying.
You're absolutely right. You want to maintain situational awareness. So you take stock of all the aspects of your current situation, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but you move more quickly into action-oriented thinking and action-oriented execution. You bucket things into what's in your control and sphere of influence, and then you take the rest. And you don't, oftentimes people say, well, I'm going to focus on what's in my control and ignore the rest. You don't ignore the rest, because again, situational awareness, because what you can't control
kill you in some cases.
You want to make sure that you're keeping an eye on the things that are effectively out of your control, so you have enough awareness to make good decisions. But you spend the majority, if not all, of your time, your talent, your energy, yourself, and your team on the things you can impact. And that's where high-performing teams spend their time. That's where great leaders spend their time. It takes some hard lessons learned, obviously, to get there, regardless of your background, SEAL or not, because the battlefield of business is different. But you can get there more quickly, I think, with having experienced some of the things that I did on the literal battlefield.
So I want to transition a little bit into, you are going to be joining us the Total Expert annual event in June. We're incredibly excited.
Yes,
You're
very
going to be doing
excited.
a keynote, sharing some of your expertise on high performance teams, how to navigate change with resilience and passion, and want to talk a little bit about the topics that you're going to cover, right, in your talk to our audience here coming up in June.
Sure. First of all, again, like you said, I'm very excited to be a part of it. Glad we're in partnership on this event. And some of what I'm going to be talking about to lay the foundation is a little bit of my background, but most of it is going to be focused on the same principles, methodologies, and frameworks that we have utilized over the decades to build arguably one of the highest performing organizations in the world, Naval Special Warfare, the Navy SEAL teams. And the principles, methodologies, and frameworks we can apply to building the most effective, highly engaged teams that deliver the best results and outcomes in any business organization anywhere in the world. One of the models that we've developed that I'm going to be sharing is we tie it all together. You'll have the inspiration, you'll have the motivation, but the main thing that we're passionate about is making sure that there's lasting change, even from the short amount of time we're going to spend together. So one of those models really is how you take any organization or team from good to great, from great to exceptional. It's all about organizational transformation and continuous improvement ultimately, because this model can apply to an individual, a small team, a leader, or your entire organization. And there's 5 tiers to what we call the remarkable results pyramid. So you look at it in your current state as a team, as an organization, the results we're achieving today, but where do we want to be next year, 2 years from now, whatever your vision is, whatever time-bound nature you want to put to that. And the 5 tiers are, at the top, you have your results. Anything you're measuring as an organization to know where you stand against the competition, where you stand in the industry, and where you stand today, so you know where you need to be to fulfill your vision, whatever time-bound nature you want to put to that. The next tier is your existing systems, your process, your methodologies. What systems and methodologies and tools and resources do you have that you're currently using? But also looking at it in the sense that, are we using the tools we have at our disposal in the right way? Are we using them consistently? We work with so many organizations like, well, we need this tool, we need better software. It's like, you guys aren't even using the tools you currently have in the manner in which they're supposed to be utilized. So no wonder you don't have the data. No wonder you have inconsistent outcomes. So looking at your current systems, do we need better systems? When you're on a growth trajectory or moving to the next level, maybe sometimes, but also you need more disciplined adherence to those systems, to those processes, and that's where accountability comes in. To support accountability and adherence to systems and process, you have to have people with a very aligned mindset. But to get that, the third level of the pyramid is the degree of commitment to the organization's purpose. That goes into employee engagement. How many people do you have that are all in? How many people are kind of disengaged but doing good enough? And how many people are actively disengaged, meaning they're agitators, they're 1 foot out the door, or they're creating a cancerous environment.
Clearly
analyzing our
the
people.
right mindset.
Yeah, they don't have the right mindset. So how many people do we have that are really committed to our purpose? And what do we need to do to get them more committed? So they follow the systems, use the tools to create remarkable results. Below that, obviously, you have to have the right mindset. And to get that, the bottom layer of the pyramid is routines. You can call them rituals, cultural experiences that should be designed to support your values, support the culture that you're trying to continue to build, manage, and nurture. And that culture and those values ultimately should dictate everything people think, the way they act, the words that come out of their mouths, every decision that they make, especially from a leadership standpoint. And that really should drive the mindset and the behavior that they take to adhere to those systems. But you have to have rituals in place to ensure people are thinking and behaving in the right way. I know that sounds, a little, like a dictatorship, but when I say cultural experiences or routines or rituals, it's easy to go back and equate that to sports or athletics. If you're going to go run a marathon, you've never run more than 2 miles in your life, you're not going to start by running a marathon unless you're David Goggins, who I trained and taught him everything he knows. That's a different story.
Can we get that? Like, you trained David Goggins, taught him everything. And I love that, by the way.
The truth behind David Goggins and all the worshipers of David Goggins, and this is kind of a joke, but it's a funny story, is that he wasn't successful in his first Hell Week attempt. He got injured. Wasn't successful in his second Hell Week attempt. I think he got injured again, more reoccurring injuries. Then he landed in my class, my boat crew, and then was successful. So do the math, put it all together.
You can put the pieces together.
I take full credit for his success then and now, and we're going to talk about the importance of humility as a leadership.
Fair enough. You said something a few moments ago that was really powerful, and that is you don't rise to the occasion when things get hard. You default back to your level of training, preparedness, your habits, your routines.
Yep.
Unpack that a little bit more. It's so really powerful. And I think so many companies, you hear people talk all the time like, hey, we got to rise to the occasion. Let's elevate to the occasion. But actually in so many cases, that doesn't necessarily get it done if you don't have the other pieces, right?
We're working with a new organization, and our first experience with them was one of their kickoff meetings here a few weeks ago. And their goal in the next couple of years is to go from where they are today to $1 billion in AAR, $1 billion in annual recurring revenue. Not many companies actually do that. And the CFO hates the word prioritization. He truly believes that everything is the number one priority. He even says that. We're not going to prioritize anything. We're going to do everything right now. So you can imagine in a realistic world how stressful that is to the leaders and to the teams who have to do the work and to execute and to find ways to actually prioritize, because realistically, they're going to have to find ways to create greater capacity and greater efficiency in order to actually execute against that very, very lofty goal. And it really is true if you think about it. And that's why great organizations, great teams invest so heavily in developing their talent and investing in their talent, not just their leaders, but their people at every level. Because when push comes to shove and you know what hits the fan, they're going to fall back to their level of training, their preparedness, their adaptability. And a lot of leaders and organizations, because they know they're supposed to want to create autonomy and decentralized decision-making, but it's a very inauthentic gesture if we say, well, we're going to create some more autonomy around here, and we're going to give teams projects that they're going to own, but we provide them no resources, no training, no clear vision, no clear outcome, no expectations. We set them up to fail every single time.
Just say, go do this thing without.
Yeah, and I'm not immune to that. I've made that mistake before too, because I was trying to be a good leader and give autonomy and run with it. And then it's like, well, that's an epic failure. But you set them up to fail when we don't do that. But we have to really invest. And that's why leaders need to, going back to prioritization, really look at where they spend their time. And as leaders and managers at any level, if we have people that report to us, or we want to just give a lot of our time, talent, and energy to the organization's mission, we need to be coaches. We need to be mentors. We need to be able to maintain focus on the big picture. We can't be in the weeds all day long trying to do the work or micromanage teams. And that takes some reflection and some self-awareness and the discipline necessary to authentically decentralize decision-making by providing the right resources and guidance to teams so that it can actually execute and deliver the results you're asking for.
And that's really ultimately when you get those components in place where you really see the force multiplier in terms of the results that you can achieve. And you've clearly demonstrated that, and you guys do great work with amazing companies all across the country. And I know you even travel internationally some now and teach these practices. And so, man, we're looking really forward to having you come up in June, buddy, and share some of your knowledge with our organization and our amazing customers. So really looking forward to seeing you in June, Brent.
Can't wait. The whole dad side of the family is from Minnesota, so looking forward to getting back to my roots, and very much looking forward to it. And I know it's going to be a great event.
Awesome, buddy. All right, we'll see you soon, Brent.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.